Okay, I want to continue by talking about the practices that one might end up engaging in if he decides to run his own run his own investment monies. All right, so again, this is the person that would say, well, look, you know, I can just go online. I can go to X Trade or Ameritrade or Options House or uh, there are many of these, and I open an account. It'll be a cash account, so I deposit 3,000, 5,000 in there, and then as soon as the monies are in, I can just start trading. I'll buy stock on RTK or whatever on one day. I'll sell it a month later, and it's going to cost me. It says that trades are happening around $4 a trade. That means I have to pay $4 commission to the online service I'm using. If I buy 100 shares, okay, I have to first pay them $4, and then I can do the transaction. They'll clear it for me. And then when I'm ready to sell those shares of QQQ or whatever, a month later or a week later or a year later, it's going to be another $4 to sell. Okay, so it's going to be, a total of $8 to make the complete buy, hold, sell cycle. Um, but I plan to make money off those stocks, and so this is the way the person is thinking. All right. Um, that's the sort of thing we're really looking into. There are other ways to do this, as we've discussed, but this is the one practice we're going to try to assume um, is going to be the most common for those that run into this sort of activity with limited funding, but personal confidence and a little bit of knowledge. All right. Eventually, they're going to have to think, well, how am I picking my stocks? Am I just throwing darts at a listing of the stocks, as the old picture goes, or what am I doing to list to pick them? So one way to do it, okay, is to just, and let's call this practice one. All right, is the graph only method. So basically, what you do is you go find a stock. Let's say this is MU Micron. All right. Uh, right now, currently, it's selling for like $9. Okay. Um, and what you do is you basically look at the graph, and if it's the graph and it's and you run on the predictability idea, right? If it's going like this, let's see. If it's going like this, would you consider that a good time to buy? All right. Now, what you basically do is you look through all the graphs you can, and you find the ones that give you a clear pattern in the past. So there are a lot of graphs that don't have this sort of pattern. They truly look random, or they don't look good. They don't look this good. But if you find a graph that looks this good, okay, good in sense of you can see the pattern in the past, right? You see it, okay. You're right here. You're right here. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Well, let's just say this is a month. A month by month graph. So this is let's see, December, January, February, and March. You're right. It's right here. So it's right there. Okay, and you see that. You say, now look. You see the length. The length. It's about ready to go up again. If the future of this graph resembles the past, its past performance. So just by looking at the graphs, you will be surprised how many graphs you will find that seem to, once you look at them, some better than others. Of course, some not at all, but there will be many that do give you a sort of a pattern like this. And you're thinking to yourself, well, it's going up. So this is actually a good time to buy because it goes up rather quickly when it does go up. If you buy right here and you hang on, you're thinking, look, it's going to go up, and I'll sell right here. I'll sell it right there. Okay. If you do that sort of thing, okay, you're basically predicating your activity or grounding it in this idea that that the immediate future of the graph is going to resemble the past. All right, and I think we all understand that it's not going to always be this way, because if it were this simple, everyone would be doing this. Now that's a good rule of thumb. All right, if first of all, when you're trying to come up with these practices, you should assume that you're not an original thinker. That the idea you just had about how to deal with your stocks or whatnot, people have had before, and if it's a good one, people are doing it right now. A lot of people. Okay, so that's a decent assumption to work on. If you're wrong and you truly are unique in that, it's a pleasant surprise. If you're right in the assumption, you've eliminated some dangerous activity that you might have done if you assume that you just found the secret, right? So you should just assume that people are just as good as you are at coming up with these patterns and these ideas, and they know that. So the very fact that obviously if this graph is going to continue like this for 3 or 4 or 5 more years, in other words, if graphs somehow had to by necessity follow their past, a 10-year-old could be doing this. So we know that this is a little too simple, all right? But the question is it going to work in the next week? And if it doesn't work, can I get out before I lose too much money? So that's what people are going to be doing with this. They're going to be in for it, not for like, oh great, it's just going to, it's always going to. They don't want to trust that, but they say, look, right now's the time. If it's going to go up, it's going to go up in 1 week. Let's buy now. And that very sort of activity itself will give it a little bit of a boost to get up there. So they're kind of pumping it up too. And what's happening is, now, usually with this sort of activity, people are not looking for new news. So this is an NNN situation, okay? NNN is no new news. Triple N, whatever you want to call it. No new news. Even with no new news, this stuff starts doing this sort of thing because people are expecting to do it, so they start buying. Okay, but then you can see that at this point right here, they're going to expect it to level out, so they stop buying or they start selling, and that's exactly what it does. So this is sort of it's fueled by people's expectations, and it can very easily be upset by an injection of news, bad news or mediocre news, or there are other ways that this can happen. For example, let's say a bank has stocks in this, okay, and I don't want to go off into distractions here. This is enough for this video here. I want you to think about this first method, the graph only method, and the idea being, can you actually do this? Is this a wise practice? What are the cons of this? What are the pros? And maybe we should come up with eventually we need to rank these practices and say, look, this is a high risk practice. This is a safe or a safer, a less risk, low risk perhaps. And I would like you to eventually be able to say, look, if I were to do this, okay, this would be the best practice for me, given the route we've shuffled our readers into. And it doesn't have to be this at all. We're going to come up with a couple of these practices. First one that you need to write about this week is try to describe this, through script, by writing it out in your paper. I was going to say verbally, and yes, technically with words, describe this on your paper, right? But write it down, write it all out. See if you can get your reader. In other words, we're doing this chunks at a time. Now we're trying to write out this first of a couple practices we're going to look into. It needs to fit underneath this idea that, hey, look, if you're going to go alone, you're going to develop a sense of this is the best practice for you. You'll eventually settle on a method. Okay. Now, what is your method going to be? Here are a couple common methods, and we'll work out some of these methods. And, then we describe it, and we try to say, well, is this a good way to do it? What are the pros? What are the cons? I think one of the cons here, one of the pros is that, it's minimal research, right? So, you get the sense that you don't have to be studying the markets 2 hours a day to do this. And in that way, you run you have a lower risk of becoming obsessed with this. Okay. Perhaps, because if this thing actually does, see, now think how addicting this would be if this thing actually does start working for you. Okay, so see, you have to let's think about the psychology of this too. You have to think about, well, what if this actually does work for people consistently, for a person? Will he be able to handle this type of constant? Hey, I'll just go in there. Give me 10 minutes. I'll find a graph. I'll find a stock that I think is gonna, and then sure enough, it happens right there. Um, what are the chances this is going to consistently in the long run work? Because if that happens a few times at the beginning, someone then becomes inordinately committed to this practice because he just thinks it's it. Okay, so that might be a con. There's not enough variance here. You're constantly trying to do the same thing. Eventually, you know, you're not gonna. It's not gonna always hold out for you. But at that point, will you be able to give it up because you think it may be one of the best things you can do? So we also need to look at whether or not it's a good thing to keep an investor. What's the word? Wary. Keep an investor on his toes. Keep an investor sharp. See, what I'm saying is, I think that this sort of thing, if it does work, it can't work for long. I don't think it can work for long. But if it does start working for someone, it might tend to make this person complacent and not lazy, but less careful and respecting of the market. Something to think about. In fact, that's what I want you to do. Is I want you to think about. So Horn says that. Is it? Do I think that way? Do I agree with? And what we're doing here is I don't want you to think, well, I don't have the content, the info, to really try to make up my own mind on this. Yeah, neither do I. But do you have just common sense? Sometimes you can just think through this and say, let me just try to imagine what that would feel like, or to do that long term, or to have that be my only method, or to really put all my money into one stock like that. Let me think of what it would really feel like. What if I had one loss? What if it were this easy? Wouldn't others be doing this? Wouldn't this be the way, the method? Think like that. Think about just the common sense of it all, or the lack thereof, and then we can evaluate it that way too. So don't be intimidated by that. Sometimes the problems with a certain method are going to be so obvious that you'll wonder why people do it. And I do too. I have to think that a sort of an addiction, an obsession with this, may be behind the reason that people do this. The promise, and I think it would be akin to why people gamble. Now, I'm saying if they go on it on their own, and they're trying to find that quick and easy and simple way to consistently make money on the market. All right. Yeah, that could that the psychological pull might be similar to with this method might be similar to someone sensing that way gambling. All right. Well, something to think about. I expect to see work develop along this theme in your report up to at least this one practice.